Well, as per usual, my Wednesday evenings end up on Doomcock, Overlord DVD's Pop Culture Breakdown. And the bulk of that particular episode was, of course, the ongoing soap opera of Disney, which is really the only entertainment they provide today that's worth paying attention to. And then, of course, Ahsoka, and we talked that over and everything. And then Tom Connor of Midnight's Edge popped in and brought us some really great news. So as a result of the strike, a lot of force majeure is the terminology for the move, and that, well, you know, the conditions because of the strike and the delays and everything, we're going to have to cancel a lot of deals. And because of that excuse, there's not much of a challenge to that. So a lot of producers of whatever deals they had have now been suspended. Now that suspension, theoretically, it could be renewed at a later date once the strike is over, but I would recommend not doing that on quite a few. So here's some recognizable faces, some I don't, but of course Greg Berlanti, who was the grand poobah over the CW Arrowverse for all those years, which comes to an end with Superman and Lois, and they list that here with him, which is actually a great show. But it was probably just too late. Had they managed to do that kind of quality for the shows, and I don't mean the money spent on the special effects, which it has more money spent on it, which is more of the reason probably why it's let go. It's too expensive, and for whatever audience it's gained, it's just not enough to put it over the top and that sort of thing. So I don't like it, but I respect it. I understand it's the reality of it. But even without that, the quality of character development and story and plot and all of that was so very good in comparison to the other CW shows. The Flash at one time kind of achieved that, but it lost it a long time ago, and they just gave up, and everything was a rinse, lather, repeat approach to templates of those shows, and it was hopeless. It was never going to get better that way. And then all of a sudden, shows like Superman and even the Stargirl show was pretty good, but it was too late, you know. And that's that. But you know, if Berlanti didn't burn any bridges or screw anybody over, then he'll probably get another deal at some point down the road. Mindy Kaling, of course, brought us the Velma show that nobody wanted, but they had already announced the season 2, and I imagine that's underway, so that'll probably happen. But for the hopes of all of this is that that'll be the end of it. Apparently, there was some other show. Is this their Sex Lives of College Girls? I'm sure Axel Braun does the better version. But the main story here is Bad Robot. Bad Robot, of course, with J.J. Abrams, his company, has, been the supposed miracle workers for quite a while, and the go-to guys from all these different studios thinking that they could turn their properties into gold. And all of this spun out of primarily Lost, of that TV series, which a lot of people hate now. I don't. I know it went bad. The ending was not great. And I understand people being upset about it. And it does show something of the nature of the Bad Robot templates of their rinse, lather, repeat, which is, of course, JJ admitted it himself, the mystery box, you tease something, but there's really nothing in it. There's really nothing there. And but that got more and more derivative and more diminished as time went on, and the trick could only work once or twice. It couldn't work constantly. But it worked enough to where he could, convince people that he was, the second coming of Spielberg or whatever, even though he hasn't even done his own Jaws yet. But it worked for a while, and he ran that scam on these studios where eventually, and they were really slow to this, where it took him a little while to realize he was the only one making money off of this stuff. There was some some sort of successes here and there. I still like the 2009 Star Trek movie for what it is. It's got stupid in it, but you know, it was a fun movie. The cast really seals the deal. And then that was it. That's all they had. The other movies are crap. And that was the end of it. And then, oh, good Lord, this spun off into Secret Hideout with Alex Kurtzman and the Star Trek, well, streaming rather than just television, but nevertheless, same idea. And it's just been awful ever since, and destroyed the franchise. Star Wars, of course. JJ really, he teased a bunch of stuff and then handed it off to some guy who never should have had anything to do with Star Wars. That's not entirely JJ's fault, but the idea that he was this magic man who could fix everything was just not true. And then he's supposed to come back and fix it after the disaster of Last Jedi, and he had nothing. He really didn't know what to do. And who knows? I mean, apparently the thing was reshot over and over again, right up to the moment it was debuted in theaters. And who knows how many other ideas might have been better or whatnot. But the massive damage was already done, and that's not completely on JJ's hands here, but he does bear an awful lot of responsibility there. But also just the idea that he's, you know, a genius or whatever is just not true. So then he moves on after that to looking to DC. DC was in trouble. They couldn't compete with MCU. And so he comes in, I'll fix everything, you know. And then what does he do? Well, he decides to hide behind skin and genitals, mostly skin in the sense of a black Superman type thing and stuff like that. After his buddy Damon Lindelof did a similar thing with Watchmen and totally ruined that, just on and on and on. And after all said and done, really the only one left out of that alumni, I guess, would be Matt Reeves. But there again, the Batman, it looks cool. It has a lot of cool mood and atmospherics. The approach of Batman being a detective was really the selling point of it. But there's no detective story in it. I mean, it's a movie that if you think about it, you ruin it. Just don't think about it, and it's cool. And that too is very reminiscent of a Bad Robot template. And so, I mean, Matt Reeves, I still think, is probably the most talented of this bunch. You know, I liked his Planet of the Apes movies, but then again, does he really deserve full credit for that? After seeing Batman, I don't know. Hopefully the second one works. Hopefully the Penguin Show is really good. Because if that happens, that might be the plan B that Zaslav kind of muttered. They'll just scrap James Gunn's DCU and just build on Batman. I don't know that means a shared universe out of that, because that version of Batman I don't think fits in with the world with Superman and all that. So, but just for the purposes of making money, yeah, that may be where they'll have to be. But so far, not all that impressed with it. So it's an awful lot of nothing, and they really dodged the bullet with this deal that they signed on with Bad Robot, who was only going to drain them of money and not provide them with much at all, because they just don't know how to do it. And so I thought that the tide had turned on Bad Robot some time ago, when they announced yet another Star Trek 4 for their Kelvin universe version of Star Trek, and announced, yes, the old cast will come back, you know, Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto and all that, and then they got JJ himself to speak to this. Oh yes, Star Trek 4 is back on, because this had been like probably the fourth announcement of this movie. Went through different directors and hands and all that, and but this time this was the deal. And then immediately he got humiliated when the cast said, it was the first I'm hearing of it. Yeah, there's no script. I don't know. There's nothing. And of course, it all went up and spoke. You know, it was trying to stir up interest, which they kept doing. And it never worked, because they'd already, they were looking for investors from people who had already been burned by them. So it really caught my attention when that happened, and I think, huh? I think this is the beginning of the end for Bad Robot, and that appears to be the case. And certainly for DC, which has got a lot of troubles, and I'm at this point very dubious on their chances. Maybe James Gunn can pull a rabbit out of the hat. We'll have to wait and see. But they really dodged a major bullet with being in bed with Bad Robot, which would not have worked out at all. But meanwhile, with James Gunn, he keeps praising Tom King, who would fit right in with Bad Robot. Hopefully that's just because, you know, his mommy's on the board and stuff like that. So you got to put up with him. Just say he's an influence and then have somebody else write it, you know. But anyway, that's the deal. So that was long in coming, probably too late for quite a few franchises, but it was inevitable because they had nothing. The mystery box isn't a mystery. It's an empty box.
Shh, shh, shh. Bad reboot.